Welcome back to the 13th annual Halloween special. Tonight we're talking about a film from 2005 directed by Jeff Wadlow, his first feature, Cry Wolf. 8 unsuspecting high school seniors at a posh boarding school who delight themselves on playing games of lies come face to face with terror and learn that nobody believes a liar, even when they're telling the truth. When you're a little kid and you go to see movies, you basically like everything. I mean, it's very rare that a little kid doesn't like a movie they go to see because it's such a fun experience to go to the movie theater. And if you didn't like something, it probably was just too mature for you or you couldn't quite figure it out yet. But pretty much every single movie I saw at the theater before age 14, I liked, because it was just such a magical experience to go there and to get to see movies. As you get older and your taste develops, you discover things you like and things you don't. But it took me a while to really have those experiences in a theater where I saw a film that I truly loathed. And of course, when I was a teenager, I wasn't seeing every single movie that came out. I was seeing a lot of movies. I was trying to see a movie a week, but I was usually focused on whatever the big, gigantic movie was. And it wasn't until later in my teens when I started to go to smaller films. I didn't have to know everybody in the cast. I didn't have to know who the director was. I just went to the movies to go to the movies. And when I was about 17 years old, I saw Cry Wolf. Here's my ticket stub for it. I remember going with my mom, and we hated it. I mean, it was just not for us. And for the past 20 years, because it came out 20 years ago, this is the 20th anniversary for Cry Wolf, I have spent all of those 20 years thinking that I hate this movie and not wanting to rewatch it. But for whatever reason this year, I think it was the 20th anniversary, my friend had never seen it and we sat down and watched it. And about halfway through, I was thinking to myself, okay, at some point I'm going to discover why I loathe this movie so much, why I have such disdain for it. And by the end of the movie, I hadn't discovered why. I think it was just the wrong time for me to see it. I also didn't really understand budget limitations when I was a kid. This was 2005, so I had seen Red Eye, I had seen Batman Begins, all of these really amazing movies. And I just thought, if you're a movie in a movie theater, you gotta be at least that good. And I don't really think I understood that at the end of the day, this being a first-timer's movie, he won a contest and won $1 million and got to make a movie. Like, this isn't like a normal Hollywood experience. This is a very unique experience, and I don't really think I gave the film the credit it deserved. It's doing a lot without a lot of money at its disposal. Something else that has admittedly changed since seeing it 20 years ago is a little thing called nostalgia, and that's a very powerful thing. AOL Instant Messenger is featured quite often in this movie, and that is not something that would have checked any boxes for me in 2005, but hearing those notification sounds now, my buddy who watched it with me was like, why are you reacting so strongly to those sound effects? And I was like, didn't you use AIM? And he was like, not really. No, we didn't really have that. And I sure did. I mean, if you hear like that door closing sound because your friend left, I remember being like depressed when I would hear that sound. Like, oh, my buddy just left. Cry Wolf feels like the end of an era for me personally, because when the slasher genre was revitalized in '96 by Wes Craven's Scream, followed up by I Know What You Did Last Summer, Urban Legend, Valentine, the Scream sequels, Freddy vs. Jason, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake, amongst others, Cry Wolf in 2005 feels like, for me at least, an ending. And it could have been because it's the last one I saw before I turned 18. I don't know, but it just feels like there's this chunk of movies between 96 and 05 or 06. Maybe Sorority Row from 08 or 09 or whatever that came out could kind of fit in there. But in general, it feels like that was this new Hollywood slasher for my generation. This is very much so a my generation movie. I was the age that these characters are at that time in the movie. And everything about it felt very much connected to what I should have been at the time in regards to like your average youth, just kind of hanging out and discovering things about themselves. And maybe the reason I hated it so much is because I didn't see any of myself in these characters. Granted, a lot of them are liars and they deceive each other and they cause a lot of problems. But as a young Jehovah's Witness kid, I think I wanted to connect with kids my age in movies that felt more wholesome. I don't know, but like for whatever reason, I just looked at those characters and I loathed them so much, and I didn't really understand the allure to the movie. And now, as an adult, I can look back on it and it feels very charming to me. I love slasher movies that take place on campuses, We don't get too many of those anymore at all. What's also interesting about Cry Wolf, and this is a spoiler, so if you've never seen Cry Wolf, I want to give you a spoiler warning now. Check out the movie. It's definitely of its era, okay? Like, it's not going to be like the next big cult classic slasher, but there are a lot of people who enjoy this movie, and I do recommend checking it out on a good cold October night where the air feels crisp and the leaves are crunching beneath your feet, which wouldn't really happen while you're watching a movie, I guess. I just thought that sounded poetic. So yeah, spoiler warning, but technically, I mean, nobody actually gets slashed in this film. 2 people die at the beginning of the movie and at the very end. One of them is Bon Jovi, and he was definitely shot through the heart. Whew! I just pulled that out of thin air. I'm proud of that. And there's a girl at the beginning of the movie that's shot as well. All of the other deaths are fake. They're all playing a gigantic prank. And so it's a slasher movie, but it's not really a slasher movie. The whole film is essentially a very in-depth episode of Punk'd on our protagonist, except Ashton Kutcher isn't jumping out of the bushes. It's John Bon Jovi. I also think, and understandably so, this could be one of the reasons that I never really enjoyed the movie the first time I saw it, because I think everything wasn't real or it's all a dream. Those 2 things, you really gotta earn those, especially the dream one. But when it comes to like, none of this mattered, that's where things can sometimes, when the characters didn't have anything of impact actually happen to them. But this movie gets away with it on the sheer passion of Jeff Wadlow trying to get this movie made and telling the story in any way he can without a lot of money. And in my notes while watching this movie, I was halfway through it and I wrote, if you end up actually liking this, explain this phenomena. And I don't really know what to say. It was so strange, this experience of knowing, like, concrete in my mind, I hate this movie, just not for me. And as I'm watching it, trying to connect with whatever my 17-year-old brain was thinking and why it wasn't for me. And I do think I've already kind of gone in depth about, perhaps it's because of the way I was raised or just the type of movie I was expecting, being unfamiliar with budget restraints and thinking that everything had the budget of Batman Begins, which of course isn't true, and just maybe expecting a little more out of it, because this is becoming a bit of an overlooked cult gem nowadays, and I do think that it has a lot of value. I think my favorite aspect of the characterization is in Lindy Booth's Dodger. She presents herself as someone who's gotten into this extremely exclusive school because she has rich parents and because she's so great at everything. And once our hero meets her in her hometown, he realizes that her parents aren't particularly rich and she lives in a small town and she's basically putting up a giant front. And there's a scene in the movie where an older man, a janitor at this school, watches her walk away, and you begin to suspect him for a second that he might be the killer. And later at the end of the movie, you realize that's just her dad. And she doesn't even want to acknowledge him because he's the janitor. And that's really messed up. And I think that there's something really great here that's underneath these characters in regards to having to pretend to be something you're not at school, to make yourself bigger than you are. I watched the unrated cut tonight, and I obviously don't remember what the theatrical cut was like. It's PG-13, but I looked it up, and apparently there are very little differences. I thought maybe the unrated cut would just be like the way to watch the movie, but I can't really say that. What I will say is that if you want to watch a slasher that's not actually a slasher, but is basically a slasher, that does have some pretty fun and entertaining characters and some good chase scenes, that has a twist that is admittedly silly, but does kind of work for me in retrospect, I do think Cry Wolf is not a bad movie at all. And it's a very interesting experience to spend 20 years loathing something and then realize you were wrong. Guys, thank you so much for continuing to watch the 13th annual Halloween special. Look forward to more videos very soon. And if you like this, you can click right here and get Stuckmanized.